I am substituting for Susan today, so I get to do both Long Island and Metro North. We're going to start with Metro North at 8:30. Are there any public comments?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, we have 4 people signed up. We ask them to please adhere to the 2-minute time limit. The first speaker is Orrin Getz.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, members of the board. My name is Orrin Getz. I'm the vice chairman of the Metro North Commuter Council. And one thing I would like to do first is thank Metro North President Kathy Rinaldi for holding a customer forum at the Nanuet train station on March 12th of this month. This was the first time that any Metro North president has ever done anything like that. And we're really glad that she came and did that. It was a good opportunity to meet with the commuters, and she rode on one of our commuter trains into Hoboken, which was fine. Also, Kathy had told me that Metro North is going to build a new shelter at Nanuet. We just like to make sure that when you do, you check with the Clarkstown Police to ensure that the camera system in the new shelter is fully compatible with the system that the Clarkstown Police use. They use, I think, a new digital system, and the system we have now is an old analog system. Also, recently, I had seen a cab car running in front of a locomotive on the Port Jervis line. And that's a matter of concern because it means that some of the locomotives on the Port Jervis line have not yet been equipped with positive train control. I think it's important at this time for Metro North to get a complete status of all of its equipment west of Hudson and know for sure which equipment has been properly equipped with positive train control and what equipment still needs to be equipped with positive train control. That, I think, is a very, very important issue at this time. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Our next speaker is Chris Silvera.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I wanted to speak about 3 pieces. A, the need for Metro North to invest in new equipment, particular equipment revolving around the issue of surfacing and new cranes. Secondly, I want to address an article I saw some while back in the Lower Hudson Journal about overtime and explain to you that this overtime is a necessary phenomenon. You tended to blame the Teamsters as if the Teamsters were stealing your money. And the fact is we're keeping you from falling off of a cliff. And the third piece is I'd like to say hello to Mr. Mordler. I don't know who he is, but I'd like to be introduced to his magic flashlight to see how well it works.
Thank you, sir, very much. We appreciate it.
Our next speaker is Jason Pinheiro.
Good morning in a very good way.
Good morning.
Kathy, I want to thank you, like Orrin said, of doing the forums. We will love to see them more often, that leadership could interact more with the commuters. And I'm still concerned about the Mount Vernon West station on the Harlem line. It's still in a, let's say, in a defective condition. It has lots of graffiti, and I wonder when the station will get a makeup. And that's all I have to say for this month, and I'll see you guys later on Long Island Railroad.
Thank you very much.
Our next speaker is Murray Bowden, and we have an additional speaker following Mr. Bowden, Lisa Daglian.
My qualifications, I'm going to contrast Boeing and Metro North. My qualifications, 1955, I graduated Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute as an electrical engineer. I went to work for Curtis Wright in Carlstadt, New Jersey, and I was on a team that built the first flight simulator using an actual cockpit. We took all the gauges out, replaced them with servos and so on. I was in a cockpit. I flew that simulator. I could take it off. I could not land it. I crashed. I was in a cockpit when the Air Force was there doing their acceptance tests. I was there because I asked good questions, and somehow my team knew that. Like Boeing, who has failed to listen, I have a question for you, Catherine. Why do you blow the train whistle at 125th Street? That regulation comes from the New York Central Railroad, which has been out of business for how many years? Like Boeing, you can't stop doing something that's entirely wrong. So in the last 2 weeks, they figured out how to fix the flight simulator that 6 months ago they said they were going to do, and 2 years ago they knew it was broken. They failed to do one thing. Tell a pilot when something goes wrong, reach up, shut off the automatic pilot. That's all they had to do. They didn't do that, and you won't stop the train whistles blowing at 125th Street. You got a problem.
Thank you very much.
Our final speaker is Lisa Daglian.
Thank you. Good morning. My name is Lisa Dagley, and I'm the Executive Director of the Permanent Citizens Advisory Committee. I just want to speak really briefly on the customer satisfaction survey that you're going to be discussing shortly. And it was great, excuse me, to see that there is continued satisfaction with customer service and communication, although that could still stand to improve, certainly, but I think that's across the entire board. My concern rests with the West of Hudson service that continues to decline, as Orrin testifies about and talks about relentlessly. We are very hopeful that that service will improve now that New Jersey Transit seems to be getting their act together, that additional trains will be returned to the schedule, and that West of Hudson riders can, in fact, get the service that they pay for and that they deserve. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
That concludes the public speakers. Mr. Chairman, I think we may have skipped the
Yes,
safety
we skipped the
briefing.
safety message. Go
All right.
ahead.
Good morning. The following are procedures to follow in the event of an emergency. If an alarm sounds, wait for PA announcement and follow instructions. If told to go to another floor or to evacuate the building, leave all unessential items behind and use stairwell A just across the main hallway or stairwell E down the hall past the elevator lobby. Notify emergency personnel if you need assistance, and AEDs are located in the main hall just past the elevators.
Thank you, sir. We have the minutes of the February meeting. Are there any comments or suggestions on the minutes? If not, I'll make a motion to approve. Second, all in favor? Okay. Are there any changes to the work plan?
Yes, as agreed upon at last month's committee meeting, the revised work plan reflects an accelerated track maintenance special report to the committee in June, and an interim report to the committee will be provided before June.
Okay. Thank you. And now we'll go on to your report.
Great. Just wanted to give an update on PTC. We have included the monthly project update in the agenda, but I wanted to note a special milestone that we reached on March 1st when we completed the required 110 RSD train runs on the pilot segment between Croton, Harmon, and Tarrytown on the Hudson Line, which was needed for FRA approval. A couple of other little things. Beginning this month, we are providing our performance and fare evasion metrics to the Metro North and Finance Committees as the board has requested. The service improvement and revenue collection improvement metrics can be found on page 151 of the agenda, which is a good opportunity for me to talk a little bit about service delivery. For the second month in a row, service delivery operated above goal at 96.3% overall during the month of February and 96.1% in peak periods. Hudson Line trains operated at 97.1 with 97.3 in the peak. Harlem Line trains operated at 97.5 with 96.6 in the peak. New Haven Line trains operated at 95.0 with 94.9 during the peak. And overall, 98.7% of our trains arrived within 10 minutes of schedule. One more update on something that I had reported last month, a circuit breaker failure that had resulted in a fire at an overhead traction power substation east of the Devon Movable Bridge in Connecticut. As you'll recall, this fire had resulted in significant damage to the cables and wires that support the operations of the power substation, and we had determined at that point in time that the substation could not be repaired. Metro North crews accelerated work last month to successfully bring online a new substation that was under construction into service so that it can provide some of the functionality of the Devon substation. Our forces continue working towards advanced functionality of a new replacement substation at Devon that had not been scheduled to come online until the fall, but we hope to have it in operation by the end of March as a balancing substation. Thereafter, we will work to incorporate the portion of the new substation that provides for commercial power feed, and then we'll be back to the configuration that we had before the fire. Fortunately, from a service delivery perspective, though, there has been minimal impact upon OTP on the New Haven line. Some other service data points. Consist compliance was high at 99.3% overall and 98.4% during the peak. We completed M8 single-car onboard video installations, which had improved the availability of that particular fleet. We do have some M8 cars still out of service due to ongoing warranty modifications. West of Hudson service operated below goal at 90.7% due to a combination of Metro North infrastructure work, New Jersey Transit equipment failures, and NJT manpower issues on the Port Jervis line. Pascack Valley is operating actually pretty well at 95.4, but the Port Jervis is lagging quite a bit at 84.3. The canceled train situation has improved quite a bit, though, on the West of Hudson trains. There were 6 canceled trains, all of them on the Port Jervis line, 2 because of no available engineer and 4 because of equipment failures. I'd like now to pivot to some way-ahead progress reports as we're continuing to move ahead on several of those initiatives. First, I've got some slides with respect to improvements at Port Chester and Harlem 125th Street. Upgrades have recently been completed at both of those stations, and we've got some pictures. Here's at Port Chester. The improved stations are safer, more customer-friendly, and provide better access for all commuters, yes. And the comprehensive station enhancements were accomplished with minimal disruption to customers. So this slide that you're seeing now are the Port Chester station improvements. It's now even more accessible to customers. An aging ADA ramp was demolished and replaced, which supplements last year's accessibility improvement with a new elevator at Westchester Avenue. As part of the station improvements, crews repainted and upgraded the railroad bridge on Westchester Avenue. Port Chester customers are now welcome to the station with new entrance signage and LED lighting, a new kiss and ride canopy and plaza, coupled with a repaved and restriped parking lot, improves the customer experience of traveling to and from the station. A raised crosswalk provides easy travel from the kiss and ride to the sidewalk on Broad Street, and customers now have access to a free Wi-Fi system in the kiss and ride area. In the spring, crews perform landscaping work at the station. At 125th Street, which is the 3rd busiest station in terms of ridership in our system, we have a host of new improvements at the station house. The station now boasts a new ticket selling facility and Wi-Fi system. We made improvements to the lobby, including repainting, renewing floor tiles, and new customer signage, as well as renovating the bathrooms. I was actually just in the bathrooms the other day. They look great. To enhance security, new lighting has been installed around the perimeter of the station building. To help customers navigate the station with greater ease, 2 staircases have been reconstructed on the south side of the station with some remaining ironwork underway. Station departure boards have been installed above the new staircases, so now customers can simply glance up at the screens as they walk up to the platform, and they don't have to go into the station building anymore. Safety, as you all know, is a top priority at Metro North, and as part of this particular station renovation project, we added 39 LED fixtures around the perimeter of the building, which more than doubles the previous number of lights. The new lights are brighter and more energy efficient and feature a slight color tint that complements the historic appearance of the station building. Now an update on Mount Vernon bridges. I know this is an area of particular concern for the committee. We achieved a major milestone on the replacement of the 14th Avenue overhead bridge in Mount Vernon, and I've got some slides to show you. These are the slides right here. Over a single weekend, the weekend of March 8th and 9th, almost 200,000 pounds of steel were delivered and erected over the railroad during nighttime outages. At present, final load testing of tiebacks is underway, and open excavations are being backfilled and compacted. This week, night work resumes with the installation of the bridge deck concrete forms and new Con Ed gas and electric utilities. The project is on track to reopen to vehicular traffic at the end of June, with final completion in the month of August. We've got progress reports with respect to 2 additional Mount Vernon bridges, the bridges at 6th Avenue and 10th Avenue. A contract was recently awarded to EE Cruz, and we plan to meet with the city shortly to coordinate this construction work and discuss the next phase of those bridge replacement projects. Oren was kind enough to remind you of the Connect With Us forum that we had at Nanuet last week. We'll be west of Hudson again tomorrow at Harriman at 6 a.m., between 6 a.m. and 8 a.m. to meet and greet our west of Hudson customers there. We've got 3 more Connect With Us in the pipeline for the next 3 months. April 23rd, we'll be at Mount Vernon East. May 14th, we'll be back at GCT. And June 25th, we'll be at Bridgeport. And those forums will be held from 7 a.m. to 8:30 a.m. Last week, I, Justin, and a group of the TRACS program folks were up at Cardinal Hayes High School in the Bronx to recognize that school for winning the high school safety poster contest and to thank them for raising awareness on the importance of rail safety. So here's a picture of that. Metro Man came too, and he was a big hit. The contest was a great and creative way to amplify our safety message and keep all of the children who live in the railroad's territory out of harm's way. Couple of information items later in the agenda that I want to highlight now. We have our annual elevator and escalator report. Generally, the picture is pretty good. Availability of elevators across the system is high, as reflected in that report. But I do want to acknowledge that we have 2 escalators in North End Access that are currently out of service. They are currently undergoing repairs before we can put them back into operation. We expect to have that done in the coming weeks. And our plan is to seek funding in the next capital program to replace the North End Access escalators that have reached the end of their useful life. They were installed in the late 1990s. Finally, I want to acknowledge some recent great efforts on the net leasing of our station buildings. At Mount Kisco, Purdy's, and Hastings-on-Hudson, those station buildings will be reinvigorated, becoming more vibrant, welcoming places for commuters and residents alike. First off, in Mount Kisco, earlier this month, Locale Kitchen and Bar opened in the station building. This includes an office loft, basement, and outdoor plaza adjacent to the building. Locale assumed the lease in 2016 after an RFP process, and renovations to the building include a recently constructed counter and bar area, new seating and fixtures, and upgraded restrooms, heating, and HVAC. We are now seeking authorization this month, so there's an information item in this particular committee package for services at Hastings-on-Hudson and Purdy's station buildings. Since tenants are responsible for maintaining the buildings, in addition to offering new amenities for Metro North customers, the leases reduce the railroad's overall operating and maintenance costs. The Purdy Station building has been vacant since June 2017, and as you'll see from the information item, there's a recommendation that we will lease this property to Hayfields LLC, which operates at Hayfields Market. Services will include serving beverages and bakery items in addition to a sit-down takeout cafe. At Hastings, the recommendation is to award the lease concession to the Goodwitch LLC, which will operate a full-service bakery and a go-to cafe. And this particular space has been vacant since July of 2018. And that's all I have in my remarks. Any questions about those remarks before I hand the floor over to Tom for some customer service updates?
Chuck?
I had noted the escalators out at Grand Central.
Yeah.
How long have they been out?
Always.
Well, these particular 2, not always. I'm actually going to turn the floor over to Glenn because we've been talking about this for a while internally in terms of trying to expedite the recovery because they've been out for a while.
Let me, if I may, tell you something from experience.
Yes.
One of the problems caused by escalator outages is people are discouraged from traveling that way and the like. But I'm particularly worried about the disabled and the like being able to get around. In Europe, on the subway system, including Russia, I should add, they have people who clean the tracks in the evening so that the escalator, as it goes down, is not replete with dirt and the like. We should do that here. We don't. If it means hiring a service to do it or hiring more people, do it, because the cost of it is less than the replacement cost you have and the trouble you cause people who are trying to come down.
Thank you.
So let me suggest you put that on your to-do list and take a look at it, because I've been on those escalators. They are a terrible walk down.
Yeah, no, I know. I agree.
So escalator number 12 has been out since October 16th for a replacement of the step chain. We expect that to be back shortly. Number 9 was out as of November 9th for a motor. We're stealing parts. Right now, 3, 4, 5, and 6 are out to be replaced, so we're cannibalizing those parts to bring them up for 9.
Let me ask you this. Who has the service contract this week?
Nouveau.
In my tenure here, we've gone through one after another, failing to take care, particularly of the Grand Central ones. Randy Fleischer is an expert on that subject. We really have to function on that because it's really not good. Every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, there's a new contractor. Every Tuesday, Thursday, and whatever, we wind up firing them and bringing in somebody else, and it's always the same problem. Now, the alternative is we do it in-house, but you're going to have to do this. I can tell you, every few months we have the same kind of problem. And you can't have it out. October through now, you have them out 6 months? That's absolutely unacceptable.
Veronica?
Are we going to the elevator report now?
I don't think we are. I think we were going to wait until we got to the information items.
Sounds
good.
good.
Okay.
Why don't we wait on that? Any other comments or concerns on the president's report? If not, safety?
No, actually, Tom is going to go first.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. Oh, okay, go ahead.
Yeah, good morning. We're going to provide an update on the Customer Service Initiative project, which is also known as CSI. We are moving into the implementation phase of the communications segment of this initiative. So beginning in April, we will be replacing the big boards in Grand Central Terminal with the new big boards. As we make these changes, we need to make structural changes to the big boards. We actually did one over the weekend. And then we are also testing, we have to test the system that drives that. So sometime in the middle of April, you'll start seeing those big boards lit up that are right there on the slide. Those are our new format. We will be giving, we'll have expanded functionality with those, and we'll be giving more information as like station stops and things of that nature. That will go throughout the year, and other changes in Grand Central to follow in the coming months will be the new gate boards and the new departure monitors throughout the terminal. Thank you.
Good. Anything else on that? Not? Safety?
All right, the safety report can be found on page 22. Customer injuries continue to trend less than 1 injury per million customers and are down over 10% versus the previous 12 months. Employee lost time injuries are down nearly 20% over the previous 12 months. Our community outreach program TRACS reached over 4,700 individuals in January. We participated in 3 community events, conducted 5 school presentations, and held 2 outreach events at North White Plains and Beacon Station. And finally, this Tuesday, we will be kicking off our QPR Question, Persuade, Refer training with our customer service department. As discussed at the last safety committee, this training will provide our employees the tools to recognize the warning signs that someone may be contemplating suicide. This concludes the report. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Questions on the safety report?
I
Yes,
just
sir.
want to compliment the MTA police for their diligent and increased activity on the gate crossings and doing the work they are in issuing summonses and warnings at an increased pace. Congratulations to you and your colleagues.
Yeah, we will have a complete grade crossing evaluation report at the next safety committee meeting, because I asked for it after the last accident on the Long Island Railroad, so I know that they are working on a full presentation for the next safety committee meeting. Randy?
I've been following up on the legislation that was introduced in both the Assembly and the State of New York legislatures, and it's moving along. That would put cameras at grade crossings, something that Mr. Merler brought up last November.
Sometimes it takes an accident to make things happen in Albany, unfortunately, as we all know. Okay, MTA Police? Chief?
Good morning. Well, system-wide for the month of February, total major felonies were down by 1, 17 crimes versus 18 crimes. However, year-to-date, system-wide, crime is down by 11, 23%, 37 crimes versus 48. In Metro North, during the month of February, felony crime decreased 21%, 11 versus 14. And that's with 2 robberies, both resulting in arrest, 1 felony assault, which resulted in arrest, 2 burglaries, also both of those resulting in arrest, and 6 grand larcenies with 1 arrest. Year to date, Metro North is down 11 crimes, 20 versus 31, or 30%. The hate crime report, we're looking at 3 crimes in 2019 versus 5 crimes same period last year. Those 3 crimes were at Crestwood, Penn Station, and Bayside. That concludes my report.
Chuck?
It's a terrible day when we only say only 3 hate crimes.
Yeah.
I have 2 questions for you, if I may. Under drug offenses, there's a meteoric increase from 5 to 47. What is that?
Well, that increase is due to a phenomenon called K2. It's a synthetic opioid, which has been problematic around the areas of Penn Station and other hubs. It's a problem citywide and actually nationally. Of those 36, of the 47 arrests, 36 of those involved arrests by MTA Police Department working the K2 problem. 3 were from cocaine, 5 heroin, 1 Xanax, and 2 marijuana. So clearly we're addressing the dealing problem in and around our hubs.
Again, congratulations. One more question, if I may. On theft of services, 35 to 58, again an increase in arrests. My question there is this fare evasion?
It is fare evasion on the railroad. So working with our partners in the railroad, we have close communication. Of those 58, 36 occurred at Jamaica, which is a transfer point, and we have easy access to get on that train and assist the conductor who's having a fare evasion problem. 10 were at Penn, the end of the line, so we also are able to get on those trains very quickly. 3 were at District 6, 7 were at District 8 in Connecticut, and 2 were from District 9 in Staten Island.
I wanted to emphasize that for a reason having nothing to do with Metro North other than to complement its police force. It seems to me that as we increase, and it'll come up in transit, the meteoric increase of over $200 million of fare evasion there, perhaps the answer is to have the MTA police start to function in curbing fare evasion on the buses in particular, which continue to increase by the hour. Because you are doing a job, others are not.
Thank you, Sarah. Any other items on this report? If not, we'll go to the information items. Kathy?
Okay, we have several. The first is the annual Strategic Investments and Planning Studies report. I don't know if we have any questions on that.
Neil?
I'm just going to note something in Sue's absence. I think we said this at the last meeting. The board members of the Metro North Committee will be sharing with staff in the next couple of weeks a list of, if you will, a wish list for the next capital plan. I bring that up because in this information item there is a detailed list of capital and strategic initiatives which may or may not dovetail what the board representing their various constituencies believe is needed. So we'll be sharing that in the next couple of weeks electronically, and then we can have a conversation. I know we've been trying to schedule something, but we just took the initiative and did it electronically. So we'll be sharing that near term.
Thank you.
Any other items on that? Okay. Now,
Now
Veronica,
it's the
you
annual
can-
elevator and escalator report.
escalator. Go ahead.
Thank you. We have very good service reliability on our escalators. I'm sorry, elevators. Do we maintain them, or do we have a third party that maintains the elevators?
Out in the right-of-way, we maintain them.
Well, congrats.
Thank you.
Customer satisfaction survey?
Yep, the results are in the book, but before we take the inevitable questions about this, I do want to acknowledge Jeff Olwell, who is here, who I'm asking to stand up. Jeff, are you here? There you are. So Jeff Olwell has been at Metro North for 28 years, since January of 1991, and he has led our various market research activities for Metro North, including surveys, focus groups, various detailed market analyses. He's supported these efforts for years across the MTA family. His work has informed many of our key business decisions and has enabled us to focus our efforts in a manner to really effectively serve our customers. He's another person we're terribly sorry to lose, but we wish him well. We wish that the customer service survey results were better this month so he could go off with a bang as opposed to a whimper, but we're still very grateful for his activities all these years, and thank you very much.
Thank you. Neil, did you want to raise something? Go ahead.
I do. And notwithstanding what the gentleman, sorry, his name again was?
Oh, Jeff Olwell.
Notwithstanding Jeff's years, in fact, I'd say that to Jeff's credit, if the numbers were different this year, I would have thought Jeff was putting his thumb on the scales a little bit, given the experiences many of us have had. And speaking as a daily commuter, they do reflect how I would feel as well. I had a general in the Army I worked for, excuse me, he used to say one incident's a data point, 2 is an emerging trend, and 3 is a trend. So you, to your credit, have put in 3 years of data, 16, 17, 18. We have not a data point, not an emerging trend, we have a trend. We have communications, train service, train schedules, by line and overall, down, down, down. And in my opinion, 5 points, if that in many cases, is a material decline in performance and perception, because you're dealing with a population generally that is static or relatively static. You're dealing with the change in the aggregate population of 1 to 2% a year. So this is not as in a new product that no one's experienced and all of a sudden they encounter it and they have a viewpoint, and then a year later you have a whole different population. This is the same people, plus or minus, experiencing it and providing their longitudinal feedback to you. This is, I find, relatively damning, may be a strong word, but concerning to me as a board member. And if we were a publicly traded or a private sector business and our satisfaction was down, especially if we were a commodity product, I suspect, much like a Burger King versus McDonald's situation, we would not be flipping nearly as many burgers as we'd like to. And the problem is, we have a delivery problem. We thankfully do no longer have a safety problem, and thank you, Justin, for you and your predecessors on working on that so hard. But we do have a service delivery problem, and I know you are working on those issues. We have talked about them in many regards. I'm happy on the on-time performance this month. It's a nice direction to see. But we have got to be consistent in our delivery. That is the number one thing we have got to start working on and continue to deliver on, which is consistency. There's no question in these remarks. This is simply a statement to saying, I am disappointed. I've said that about PTC. I say that about these figures, and I'm hoping whoever Jeff's replacement is next year will not hear a mildly scolding commentary from a board member, but instead hear a positive single data point in the right direction towards an emerging trend. Thank you.
Any other comments? Veronica.
I do want to commend our employees. It is the only area in the survey where we have more than 50% very satisfied. So I hope you extend my gratitude.
Go right ahead.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I mean, our customers are consistently happy with the day-to-day interactions that they have with our employees, and that's obviously a real point of pride for all of us, because they're our ambassadors in terms of, establishing those relationships and making sure that people are satisfied with the interactions that they have on a daily basis. So it's very important to us that that's a continued strong metric for us. To your point, Neil, I don't like to see these numbers either. I think that given when the survey was taken, which was June, not all that surprising because, we had come off some bumpy months with respect to some storms, and we were just starting to see the impact of the infrastructure work on the OTP, and we've talked about that quite a bit. So I'm never going to be the one to say we've turned the corner and it's going to be better for all time, but we are also focused on service delivery in a really major way. and we'll continue to report back on that, on a monthly basis. But, I think that our priorities are the right priorities, both in terms of improving the reliability of the service, but also continuing to be committed to the safety of the operation. So, you have, our assurances that we're, that our priorities are sound ones, and that we're going to be working in the right direction.
Randy?
I note that the satisfaction for west of Hudson service is 64%, so that's not even a 65.
Yeah, no, it's terrible.
And
It's
I
terrible.
know that we're not.
I'm surprised it was that high, actually, after everything I've heard.
Well, again, it was June, so the express train was being canceled.
No,
They
this
were
was
just
done later in the year.
Yeah.
It's already,
Yeah.
so we were promised it was coming back in the first quarter, and it's not happened. And I don't even know that it's going to come back in the second quarter, because I did speak with the Senior Vice President of Operations, Ray Kenny, alumnus of
As have we.
LIRR.
Yeah, as have we.
And when I asked him about it, he said, well, I can't tell you. So I'm thinking, is this because it's a top secret? And he said, no, we just don't know. But I mean, we need to hold their feet to the fire.
I agree.
And I don't know what the progress is on getting a new agreement with them. We talked about this last year, that staff would be working on that. We need to get some accountability from
I agree.
them. And I'd like to see those trains come back sooner rather than
I agree.
later.
I would too.
Norman?
Yeah, there's a decision-making tool referred to as confirmation bias, where people like to look for things that confirm their predispositions. I suggest that a lot of what you have in the customer surveys is the opposite of confirmation bias, that the commuters quite rightly realize that the worse they report their feelings regarding the service, the more likely they are to get more service. And and I encourage them. But I think we as a board and the leadership of the railroad has to kind of separate that and look at service planning as the key element in driving better commutes, and concentrate on better commutes rather than just satisfaction of the commuter. It's nice when the commuter's satisfied, but I don't really believe that how you interview them. I'm more interested in where the commuter's going and how many of them get on the subway after they get off our service. And I feel that our data on that stuff is very thin.
Okay, obviously there's a 9-month gap between the time the survey was taken and the reporting of the survey, which skews maybe in both directions some of the findings in that regard. Obviously, you've had a substantial new investment in both customer satisfaction and service over the last 9 months. I can only tell you anecdotally, as you know, I don't ride the Metro North, but I have my daughter and my son-in-law who do every day from Irvington, and their complaints have gone down in the last 9 months. So I can only tell you anecdotally, and they're never bashful about who to call in that
Well, I'm
context.
happy
They
to
don't
hear
call
that. That's
you,
good.
they call me.
I'm happy to hear
in
that they're
regard.
doing better.
So I believe we are moving in the right direction in that regard, but the survey is always a good measurement at that moment in time.
Absolutely.
Based upon, as Neil said, the previous years and seeing where things go. And obviously, we have the same issue in the Long Island Railroad Committee and, the same discussion point. But it's always a good measurement in time, even though the time may not always be factored into how it's received.
Well, and Norman's remarks remind me that we're going to be instituting our new spring schedule in the middle of April, that we were very careful in terms of developing that schedule to be able to account for the infrastructure work to hopefully give our customers a more reliable experience over the course of production season. So it provides me an opportunity to remind you all that April 14th is going to be the new schedule.
Kathy?
Yeah, go ahead.
I do have a response also for Mr. Brown. In terms of the origin-destination work, that's undertaken in a different survey that looks at folks who live within our territory. It's coordinated by MTA as well, and so there is data and information on that we do on a periodic basis.
Do you know when the last time that was done?
Jeff? We just did it this year, right, Jeff? 2016, 2017.
Okay. Neil, go ahead.
Sorry, a very basic question, which I don't know why I didn't ask. Why are we waiting until the March meeting to see June data?
I actually don't have a good answer to that question. That's always been the way it's been presented. I don't know in terms of the processing of it, but that's always been sort of the interval.
Okay, well, before we get the answer, let's just not do that. Murray Bowden actually brings up a good point. I don't know if maybe that's the way the New York Central did it. I don't care. We need to see customer responses much earlier. Maybe, Jeff, you have an opinion from the era and outgoing?
But this is consistent across the MTA family. This is
Then
not
let's
just
do
Metro
it.
North.
But
I'll find out from Metro.
I don't care about the rest of the MTA family. I care about ours.
Yeah, no, I get that. I'll find out from Metro
If we
North.
could do it in
from MTA
October,
planning. I'll find out.
It just seems like
Yeah.
kind of crazy.
No. I think that's a fair point. I'll find out from MTA planning the reason why this timing has historically existed. I don't know the answer to that question.
I'm not asking about what the reason is. I'm asking that we try to find a way to do it.
Yeah, well, I'm going to ask both questions.
Okay, good. Thank you.
PTC?
Yeah, okay, so the PTC project update is in the agenda, and we're happy to answer any questions that you might have in terms of the current status of the project.
Neil, go ahead.
Thank you. I have a couple of questions.
Sure.
I have three questions, I
Okay.
guess. So I'll go one at a time. First on page 124. We have 10% increments in the site integration testing, 20 to 30, 30 to 40, 40 to 50. Danbury, New Haven are just over, well, I guess Danbury's beyond, it looks like 45, and New Haven's at 40. Just walk me, what are the blocks that they're such?
That drive the percentages?
Yeah, thank you.
Glenn, you want to speak to that?
So on the Danbury branch, which would be our next one to put into extended RSD as soon as we get the okay from the FRA, we go through and we reprogram all the transponders. We light up all of the radio cases, tune the cavities so we have the correct frequency, not the test frequency, the final frequency. We're just about done with that right now. We run a host of test trains to verify that the linking distance between transponders is correct. So in other words, we verify that everything is perfect so that when we actually start running, it's as we expect. And we've been working on the east end of New Haven for some time incrementally. Our efforts right now are on the Danbury.
That's helpful, but it doesn't answer exactly my question. What I'm trying to understand is, to get from 20 to 30, is that the things you just talked about? Is that 30 to 40? Like, what are the components of each of these? Is it the number you did? And you take, there's 100 cases, so if I got 33 done, I got 33% done? Like,
Yeah, it's basically a percent. Each segment has a different volume, so it's a percentage of how much of that we're working on.
Okay. I got yelled at by a client many years ago because I showed her a Gantt chart like this, and the Gantt chart had 10 steps. And we were halfway done. We got 5 of the steps done. And I said, we're halfway done. She got really, most brilliant CEO I've ever worked with. And she goes, well, were those the easy steps or the hard steps? Wow. And I think then I said something really stupid that really angered her. I think I said, you got to take it with a grain of salt. Yeah. And that really upset her. The point is that I can't tell which 10% are the easy 10% and which 10% are the really hard ones. And we'll get to that when we talk about the software piece. So your guidance along the way, I'm not asking for a response to this. Your guidance along the way, what parts of the harder ones is helpful. Okay. On page 125, I don't remember this concept being implemented or shared. Regression testing, what are we regressing, please?
So as we implement new software versions, we make sure that the newest version didn't undo any of the stuff that was in the previous version. So we're right now going through regression testing on what is known as S4B, which is the penultimate software version, S5. We should get middle of April, and that is the one that we can use to expand extended RSD throughout the territory.
Okay, that's helpful. And then the last one I want to ask is that I was surprised on page 129, and maybe I'm misreading it, maybe it's a subset, but there is a additional recall that I see listed here that I do not recall us discussing. I remember discussing the undercar scanner antenna by Siemens. I now see a General Electric radio recall Can you please either correct my misrecollection or maybe to expand upon whether this is a new recall, an additional one?
I think it was in last month, if I'm not mistaken. I think we've reported that previously, but it's not one that we're as concerned about. I'll let Glenn speak to that.
It's actually been longer standing. We've known about this for a long, long time, and it was just programmed and in the works. And we're now finally changing them out, and it's really just a swap
Yeah,
one
it's
unit
not,
for
it's,
another.
we're not concerned
so
about
this
this
is fairly transparent.
Okay. Any other questions on PTC? But under the schedule I've read and everything else, we're still on schedule for completion
We are.
on the completed date, for
We are.
lack of a better term.
Yeah, by December 31st, 2020, we're still on track for that, yes.
Okay, okay. We have the 2 lease agreements for Hastings Station and Purdy's. Are there any questions about either of those? Neil?
I do have one, and it's a very minor one. In the report on hayfields, there is a discussion in the comments, and this is the freeform comments. It's the 3rd paragraph, page 135. It states, in lieu of providing a personal guarantee, Hayfields has agreed to post a 12-month security deposit, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Which is a creditworthiness question, I guess, about Hayfields. I see no equivalent commentary about the Good Witch, which, and again, these are real small things relative to our billion-dollar deficit heading in 2022, which is what I think a lot about, or PTC. But is it a matter of course that we ask for a guarantee? And if so, why is it being mentioned in the case of one vendor and not another? And that may be a question for our real estate guys.
Well, we have them here, so they can answer it. Neil, do you want to step up?
We do ask for guarantees as part of the RFP process. Actually, we do also talk about hayfields, not hayfields, Goodwich and Hastings. They are providing a guarantee. I believe it's a personal guarantee from the principal, and it's in the 4th paragraph.
So the option, you provide 2 options, basically, and whichever one the lessee decides to do is, as long as it's one of the 2.
Yes, and we do check their credit. We have a service. We have their proposals, their financial information. It's submitted to a credit agency, and we evaluate. There was no issues with the Purdy's location with the proposers. From a credit standpoint, they just did not want to provide a personal guarantee, but given that they were established, they've been operating Hayfields Market in Purdy's, North Salem, successfully, well established in the community, we were comfortable proceeding without a personal guarantee.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else on either of those 2 items? Okay, let's go to procurements.
Good morning. There are 3 procurements in this month's package totaling $43,778,356. There is 1 non-competitive procurement totaling $1.3 million. There are 2 competitive procurements totaling $42,478,000. $478,356. The non-competitive procurement is a request for a contract modification in the not to exceed amount of $1.3 million to the firm Swisslog Logistics for an on-site electromechanical technician to maintain Metro-North's industrial automated storage and retrieval system, also referred to as ASRS, located in Metro-North's New Haven Central Distribution Warehouse. The 2 competitive procurements are as follows. A request to award a 26-month competitively solicited and negotiated design build contract in a not to exceed amount of $33,622,070 to the firm Arch Associates LLC to design and construct the Maybrook Trailway section of the Empire Trail Initiative adjacent to Metro-North's Beacon Line from Brewster to Hopewell Junction in Putnam and Dutchess Counties, New York. In accordance with MTA policy regarding the use of the design-build process, Metro-North also seeks approval at this time of the payment of stipends to the shortlisted firms who were not selected to receive the award. And secondly, a request to approve for approval of a contract modification in not to exceed amount of $856,286 to the joint venture Judlow TC Electrics for the federally funded design build, power and communication and signal infrastructure improvements. As a result of Superstorm Sandy, a significant portion of Metro-North's Hudson Line was completely submerged, and as a result, power and CNS infrastructure systems were inundated with salt water and significantly damaged. These additional funds are required for unit price adjustments which reflect actual field conditions. May I please have a vote for these procurements presented in the March procurement package?
Questions and comments on these? Veronica?
With regards to the Maybrook Trail, it indicates in the staff summary that the procurement's to be funded by New York State. Is that in full? And is that a reimbursement?
It is in full. It is. You may recall that this was an initiative that began in 2017. There is actually legislation appropriating this money, so it is in full. And we are in the process of working with State DOB now on an MOU that will essentially, set out what the mechanism is for those reimbursements.
Do you know the source of this funding, Kathy? Is it state parks, or?
I don't know the source of the funding. Steve, do you know the source of the funding?
This funding will be done through state tax-exempt bond funding.
And just a few more follow-ups on that. So I understand this procurement is for the design and construction, but then beyond that, maintenance. Who's responsible for?
The counties.
We're
negotiating with the counties for a maintenance agreement.
Okay. Great. And then that's all. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to, at the end of this, recommend that the ARCH proposal be tabled. And I'm going to tell you why. This proposal does not pass the smell test. So let me give you some background. For the past decade or more, as Mr. Mannix will tell you in greater detail, the city and its various components, the bikers, variety of advocacy organizations, have argued for a Hudson River Greenway that would go along Manhattan, as it does now, connect to the Bronx, then via Yonkers to go up and move toward upstate. And the key portion of it, putting aside how they cross from Manhattan to the Bronx, was to construct a greenway, bicycle path, and pedestrian walkway through the Bronx in the Riverdale section of the Bronx. The obvious connector was then to do one of the three bridges. They have their problems, but they are an obvious way. United States Senator Schumer proposed one way. A variety of local elected officials and the borough president of the Bronx proposed an alternative way. Putting that aside, the focus was on three issues for doing it in the Riverdale section, or Community Board 8 section of the Bronx. The issues were feasibility, cost, and who should bear the cost and how. I was persuaded as far back as Mr. Permit's presidency, and again by Mr. Giletti, that this was something that was not good for the MTA. It would run along the river and to the west of the railroad tracks, and that because of that it was neither feasible, and more importantly, it was a waste of money at a time when there were huge deficits and it should not be done. And so I went as Mr. Mannix will tell you, to the community board on which I serve and made the case for rejecting it. I lost. Now, at that point, the state senator from the district went out and obtained thousands of dollars of funding for the MTA and Metro North to do a study on feasibility. That feasibility study was finished last year, and it provided a clear showing that the project was feasible, and indeed, in the construction of it, it would necessarily provide greater support in the event there was another hurricane or storm that caused flooding, because you would have to build up that area. And the erosion from Hurricane Sandy in some portions has been extremely significant. That study was followed by another series of meetings at which members of the MTA staff testified before hearings held by the community board under the supervision of the Bronx Borough President. And the bottom line was, yes, it's feasible, but we don't have the money to do it. We can't do it. And why, at a time when we have huge state and local deficits, do we want to do this now? And so, notwithstanding the feasibility argument being disposed of, the issue was effectively tabled unless we would go out and raise the money ourselves. Now, all of a sudden, as soon as it's tabled, this one comes up, spending the same amount of money, doing exactly the same kind of thing, but not part of the Greenway, not part of a connector between New York City and the upstate area, not providing anything for the city of New York or anything for the people of the Bronx. Personally, I think it stinks. Personally, I have serious question as to how you can justify doing it there and not in the Bronx. Why is the cost better here than the cost there? Why is it less feasible in the Bronx than it is up there? Why on earth should Metro North be the champion of it there and not here? And I accordingly move to table until we get a report that explains the defense to those points. In my view, there is something rotten in Denmark here.
So I want to unpack that a little bit, but the first thing I want to do is actually ask John to speak about the portion of the Empire Trail that is within the city of New York, because part of this project is to have a trail that runs from the city of New York really up through north and west. So can you speak a little bit to the New York City aspect of the trail? Because I know you're familiar with the route.
So the Empire Trail is supposed to go from the Battery to Canada, due north, and then at Albany go west to Niagara Falls and Buffalo. As you know, I think there's an active bike trail along the Hudson River in Manhattan. The route they plan on taking out of Manhattan is at Dyckman Street. They take a right and they go inland to, I think it's Sedgwick, and they take that to about 218th Street, and they go over to Broadway. They take the Broadway Bridge. So now they're in the Bronx. They go through up Broadway into Van Cortlandt Park, at which point there's a Putnam Division Railroad trail that begins in Van Cortlandt Park by part of the Bronx, and then it goes into Westchester County. It follows that route through Westchester County. It's the South County Trail, the North County Trail. In Putnam County, still in the Putnam Division, old Putnam Division right-of-way, Putnam County has built the trail into the village of Brewster, at which point there's the Putnam County is responsible for constructing a connection over our right-of-way at our southeast facility, at our shop there, that will take that over the right-of-way Harlem line and connect to this trail, and then the trail will then go from Brewster to Hopewell Junction and keep going. So there is a connection that takes it all the way from the Battery through Manhattan up to the Bronx. It's not along the shoreline, as you talked about, as Mark's talked about with you for a long time.
So now let me answer that one. You are looking for numerous deaths and disability under that pathway. First, you got to go through the streets in Washington Heights to go over the Broadway Bridge, which has trucks and cars going aplenty 24 hours a day. So you get across that bridge, and now you're on the city streets. You go on the city streets through Broadway. You go up Sedgwick Hill. Sedgwick Hill makes the hills of Riverdale look like nothing. All right? So now you're going up the hill, Kingsbridge Hill, towards Sedgwick Avenue. And you're on Sedgwick Avenue, and again, you are part of the bumper car traffic all the way through. Are you serious about the idea of submitting bikers, pedestrians, hikers, and the like to those risks when there need be none at all?
Chuck, can I just clarify something? I think what we're talking about here, I understand your umbrage. I think what we're describing here is only the parts that are in Putnam and Dutchess, which is...
No disagreement. My concern with this is the following. A, this surfaces the moment...
Put your microphone.
I have no problem with the Putnam piece. And the question is timing, and the question is veracity of explanation.
Well, here's my first question. I do not assume that Metro, and you can clarify it. I do not assume Metro North selected that route.
And we have no role in the construction of it either.
So I'm not arguing that you are not correct. That is not the point, and I'm not arguing that your concern is not warranted. I'm not arguing that either. The issue is Metro North, I assume, was not maybe involved, but was not the determining factor or entity in determining what the route is going to be between Manhattan and Putnam County. So
that's correct.
No.
I assume Metro North did not determine.
Right.
My issue is simply this. Metro North was, and it used me, and I was played. It used me, and I was willing to be used, so we're clear about this, to oppose the Riverdale portion of it, the CB8 portion, on two grounds. The first ground was cost. The second ground was the issue of whether Metro North ought to play any role in the process at all. Those both apply here. In my view, we ought to have a Hudson River Greenway. That is a total change of position on my part, brought on by Metro North's activities here. And number two, it is something that ought to be done along the entire stretch. I would like to defer this for 1 month so that in that month, the president of Metro North, in whom I have enormous confidence, can take a look and tell us why the same kind of standards should not apply to the CB8 portion of the Bronx portion of the Hudson River Greenway.
Okay, so do you want to go first, Neil, and then I'll come?
Go ahead, Neil.
Because I have to leave in a minute, so I wanted to share one point, which is I don't know if I would need a month's delay, but I need a delay for a different reason, which is I want to bring up our departed, and I miss very much Carl Weiss brought in this board. But he brought up an issue unrelated to this particular topic, but I think it's germane, which is if we're going to have funding that's coming from the state to pay for this thing,
right,
I would like a letter before I vote on anything that obliges us to spend $30-some-odd million for a trail, which is not the business we're in. And until we see proof, and this is where I think Veronica was going, until we see written proof that the state will be funding this, that we put it in our own memo, to me, is insufficient. So if we have proof that the state is going to pay for it in some letter of writing, which is similar to what Carl requested at the last month, I can't actually remember what the topic was.
Renato.
So I will not be able to sign off on this. This is not the business we're in. And so this is if this is a funded mandate, I want proof of the funding. So that's a different reason than my colleague has, but I do believe strongly in that.
Then with both of those, listen, the only way I would support this is if the state of New York was reimbursing us. If it was Metro North money, we wouldn't have been having this discussion. I assume from what you said, there is a legislative authorization.
There is, and we have a copy of it. It's helpful at all. Yeah, we have a copy of the letter. Yeah, we have that.
Right,
we'll pass that along.
That's what he said.
Yeah, we have that.
The issue is, and as I said, Chuck, the issue is there is no question that. Well, let me ask it this way.
Okay.
Which state entity made the decision as to the route through the Bronx? I guess that's the question. Who made that determination?
Sorry, I'm not a speaker, but
The Greenway.
The Hudson River Greenway, which is kind of the point
Project
of
manager.
contact for the Empire Trail. They were looking to get from the Battery to Albany.
Right.
And they took because it had already been built in Manhattan, and they were trying to connect it to all existing trails in
John, why don't you sit
Westchester
down?
County.
John.
That was the link. Sorry.
Has this been, legislation been enacted?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah,
this was last year's.
Yeah,
This is last year's budget.
Yeah, there is enacted legislation
this is
provided
last
for
year's
funding
budget.
of this initiative, which I think makes
Yeah.
it a bit different from the Greenway of the Bronx.
Yeah.
We actually have money available. The one thing that I would say, Neil, I said it a little while ago with respect to the availability of funding from the state. We have had, I think, at least 2 conversations with staff at DOB. They have been extraordinarily cooperative, understanding that we need that these questions are going to arise, right? That there actually is money there. So I can tell you that those interactions have been extremely productive, and we have absolutely no reason to believe that this funding will not be available.
So my only concern, just looking at this, and thank you, John, for providing that, there's a dollar amount attached to this. I don't know the difference between the 77 line and the 123 line. I don't know if those are additive or one's a subset.
77 was allocated to the Power Authority for their to sub-grantees. The other was to the Greenway, which is where we're getting our funds through. We're
So we're 33 of 123, which is not an insignificant percentage, given it's only a very small segment of this very large trail. It doesn't say they will cover every and all expenses. It says it will cover 123 million. So not knowing any more than what you just gave me, I have a tiny bit of a tummy ache that says 31 may not be sufficient, because if the rest of the trail costs at least 10 times longer than our little segment, and it may use up all these funds, sort of like a sinking fund. That may not be.
They've actually set aside for us $42 million, which is this ARCH contract, as well as other soft costs related to the project.
So can we see that too, that set aside, please? All right, thank you.
Sure. I'm just the question that I would have for the committee and for you, Mitch, is whether, as opposed to putting this off for a month, which will delay the commencement and potentially completing this project at the end of 2020, which is the goal. Can we see between now and Wednesday whether we can get adequate documentation together to give you comfort that we're actually going to get this money? Because that sounds like a stumbling block here.
My point is not.
I think we have 2 issues.
Well,
we
we
have
have Chuck's issue, I know.
And then we have Chuck's issue, and I think we need some further information from, I guess, the Greenway Council, if that's the entity you're telling us made the decision in the Bronx to not go with the river route, for lack of a better term, and to go with the more inland route.
They made that decision after they were told by, and the community board was told by staff of Metro North, that even though feasibility was demonstrated, there were...
Right, I understand.
I think the larger issue that for that particular route is that the goal was to try to get something done by the end of 2020.
Right.
And the way they could do that in that time frame was stitch together, to the best of their ability, existing paths that were already in place. The section that we've talked about for many years in the Bronx was challenging by itself, but once you get to Ludlow, you run out of real estate on the Hudson River. So now you're going up onto whatever it is, I'm not good at this, Ashburton, Warburton, through Yonkers. So there's not a continuous pathway which exists if you use the Beacon Line and you use the existing North County, South County trails through the counties.
And so Senator Schumer addressed that point. And Senator Schumer said, and understand, I was an opponent of this because I was persuaded that none of this could be done. Persuaded by staff of Metro North and 2 successive presidents. Simple answer to it, as Senator Schumer found out and put in his report, well, there were pathways that could be used. I can give them to you. They involve bridges and tunnels, so you have an immediate clue to where I am pointing. But they would not involve the public streets. They would not involve bus lanes. They would not involve truck traffic. They would not involve the potential for people being killed. But the issue here, in my view, is I need to know whether or not somebody intervened here to make sure that the Bronx portion wouldn't go ahead, the city portion wouldn't go ahead, while the upstate portion did. The city of New York is entitled to better than that.
Veronica, go ahead.
Chuck, I certainly appreciate any disparity that may, or any possible disparity between a trail in the Bronx and a trail in Putnam and Dutchess, and I appreciate the points that you're making. Are you suggesting that the information that you're asking to be provided would then alter your vote, either to a yes or a no?
I want to know why. Simple question. Why? Compare the two and give me the answer why, and do it in justification terms. Understand my view. I agree that the Putnam portion is good. I agree that as much as we can do by 2020, we should do. I agree that it is time that we paid attention to the bikers, the hikers, and the rest, because New York, by what is shown on the west side, has really come to enjoy and accept that. That's clear, in my view at least. What I have a problem with is all of a sudden the Bronx gets shot down and this comes up. That I find trouble.
Right, and I fully understand that, and I also, knowing the Long Island experience, okay, having a bike path on any roadway is a disaster waiting to happen, okay? I agree with you 100%. I would suggest, Chuck, if we could, let's just move this to finance at the moment, okay? But I think incumbent upon the Metro North and or the Greenway people, however that works, to provide both Neil, his issue in relation to the guarantees and how that works, and also a report on not only this piece, but the Bronx, Manhattan piece and Westchester piece, to determine how those decisions were made, when they were made, and what's the next step in that regard. Is it intended, is the city street option intended to be a short-term option to complete by 2020, or is it intended to be a permanent option that is now not going to be back and looked at in that regard? And also, the feasibility study that Chuck put out there and the issue of funding. Is it necessary for us to go back to the state legislature, or is the funding for that portion in the appropriation that was included in the 2017-2018 budget? I don't know the answer to that question, but I'd be very interested in finding out the answer to that question in that regard.
Okay, so can I just say two things?
Let me just...
Okay, yeah, please.
If I may. Mitch, I have the highest regard for your attempt to try to do this and your judgment. I am concerned about one thing, and that is we need to air this out.
Yep.
I mean, we need to make the people in the community boards in the Bronx, the borough president of the Bronx, the elected officials of the Bronx have a clear sense they're not being gamed here.
I agree 100%, and on behalf of this committee, we're going to make sure that happens, or it doesn't happen, depending on whether the sentence was positive or negative in that regard. But we will make sure they get the answers to those questions, without a doubt. And I think the president has clearly indicated she's going to try to do that.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing that I do want to say, though, just in case it's not already obvious, I mean, the Empire Trails project, and John can correct me if I'm wrong, is intended to provide connectivity from essentially New York City up to the Canadian border over to the Bronx, over to Buffalo. The other project that you've been referring to that has been out there for a while, and I know former Senator Klein was a real champion of that project and gotten some money for funding the feasibility study. That's an independent project. That was, the route, as John has said, is independent. It does not provide that connectivity to the remainder of the route that will go up to the Canadian border and over to the western part of the state. So that is it's interesting that we've got that planning report in the information items as well, which shows that we have multiple trail projects that we're actively sort of monitoring throughout our territory. That is another one of those trail projects that does not provide the necessary connectivity to the Empire Trails, but that may be, from your point, justified for other reasons, because it shores up the shore, because it's a wonderful amenity to people in the Bronx. But from a route perspective, it doesn't provide the connectivity connectivity to the remainder of the Empire Trail that the current route in the Bronx does provide. So to your point, though, we can get information from the Greenway and from other project managers from the state with respect to how they ultimately arrived at the route through the Bronx up from Manhattan. We can get that information for you. We can get that between now and Wednesday. But the reason, again, John, correct me if I'm wrong, the shoreline path, for lack of a better word, the path through Riverside up to Ludlow, will not provide the connectivity to the balance of the state, which is why it's an independent project, not part of the Empire Trails project.
But maybe,
but it could be funded.
Very much warranted
Sure, of course, it could be funded.
in that
And again, I think similar to this project, we would want that to be funded by not Metro North, right? I mean, it's a but this project, the Empire Trails project, is being funded by the state. So to the second point, Neil's point, we can get whatever additional assurances that the committee and the board is looking for with respect to the fact that the state is going to back that commitment. Based upon the interactions we've had up to this point, we have every confidence that that is the case. All of the staff level interactions, and I think that there have been higher level interactions because of obvious concern on the part of the committee that we're going to be left holding the bag. We have gotten absolutely every assurance that we feel comfortable with that the state money is forthcoming, but we can have that documented in a way that will satisfy the committee so that this can move forward hopefully on Wednesday, because we don't want to lose any more time, frankly. This is not just basically paving a pathway in the middle of the woods. There's some really technical and challenging engineering that needs to be done to get this thing delivered. We don't want to lose another month if we can absolutely not help it.
Veronica?
I've heard a few times now that we don't want to lose any more time, but this original RFP was issued in May of 2017 and is now coming to us nearly 2 years later as a procurement. So I don't understand the urgency or the expediency now when for 2 years ago is when we approved the RFP process.
Well, I mean,
and if I may just make just
please,
one
go ahead.
final comment. I support the acting chair's recommendation to table this until the finance committee. I don't think that supporting this is mutually exclusive with highlighting the points that Chuck is making. And
No, I don't
I would
either.
continue to support his request for information and then his advocacy for the Bronx.
No, absolutely. No, I mean,
I don't think there's any question, this project on its own is beneficial, assuming it is being paid for completely by the state of New York, which is a condition precedent,
Of course,
I think,
I understand.
for the support of the committee members. That by its, the project in Putnam County is very important in that regard. The project in the Bronx, or various projects in the Bronx, are also very important to this committee in that regard because they reflect upon the necessity of ensuring either connectivity completely or other projects that are beneficial on their own and may need our assistance in making that happen, especially if there's a water route. So
no, I do think, we've had, I think Mike has been, and Mike's staff has been at the feasibility study, the public meetings, reporting back on the feasibility study for the route that you've been referring to, Chuck. And I think that those meetings have actually been very positive. We've had very good relationships with the community because we understand the desire to have that connectivity and the importance of that project to the Bronx. So we're in no way wanting to foreclose that conversation. We think it's an important conversation to have. It just feels separate from the conversation with respect to the routing of the Empire Trail, which provides that greater connectivity through the rest of the state.
Go right ahead.
I'm all for conversation, but it's time.
We agree. We will make sure it's time. Randy, did you have something to add?
Wait, the answer to the RFP and why it's taken two years to issue the procurement?
So there was a preliminary design process. So even though it's a DB, we needed to do preliminary design. So we had retained WSP to work through some of these technical issues. So there's retaining walls that need to be constructed, bridges that need to be reconstructed. So there was a period of time necessary to essentially finalize the preliminary design such that we could have a good DB procurement. And now, we're already in March now of 2019, desirous of meeting the end of 2020 deadline. We have issues with respect to the seasonality of construction, that sort of thing. So, you want to take advantage of the good weather in that kind of a location. So there is certain work that's weather dependent as well.
Randy, do you have something to add?
We are blessed by having experts on that side of the table, and we have someone here who can share, has familiarity with this project. That's my executive director of the PCAC, Lisa Daglian. She can give you some brief, answer some questions maybe if you would wish. She's seated right there.
Not in this one.
Not on this one. Okay. All right.
So we know what you're looking for. So we'll get some more information with respect to the routing through the Bronx of the Empire Trail portion of the, the Bronx-Manhattan portion of the Empire Trail. And we'll also see what we can do with respect to getting greater assurance with respect to the state reimbursement, such that we would hopefully be able to move this ahead on Wednesday as planned.
I would also like to have an explanation of why the MTA, or Metro North, effectively shut down the Bronx connector that would have been the Greenway.
I don't think that's, Chuck, I'm going to take issue with that. I don't think we effectively shut down anything.
Then say that in writing, because that's what was the impression left with the community board.
Well, let's get all the information.
We can get that
appropriate.
information. Yeah, I don't agree with that characterization. I think that we've had a good relationship. I think it's really been money dependent, to be honest with you. But I can get and I can put in writing, you know, the way we feel that we left things with respect to that particular routing of that particular trail, and we can have that information to you by Wednesday. That's not a problem.
Okay. All right. We're good? Okay. I understand. Let's do, if there are no other questions on the one non-competitive procurement, just the Swiss log logistics first. I would move that. Is there a second? Second. Any other questions? All in favor? Aye. Okay. And now we'll do the two competitive procurements, which is the Arch Associates on the trail with all the conditions that have been agreed to by the president and staff with regard to additional information between now and Wednesday, and the Judd Lau one. I would move both of those to finance. Is there a second? Second. All in favor? Aye. You want to abstain on? Mr. Merdler abstains on the Arch Associates one.
And I recuse myself from Judd Lau.
Okay. All right. I think other than that, we now have, that's the end of procurement, right? That was enough?
That's it.
Welcome to the committee. And
thank you.
Sometimes it's not as extensive, but sometimes it is, and it's always beneficial when it is, because that kind of conversation is always helpful in that regard. We have a number of other reports in the book from Metro North. Are there any questions or comments on any of the other items? Go ahead. Go right ahead, Chuck. Go right ahead.
We have an elevator problem at Grand Central as well as the escalator problem. According to the report on, I don't know what page this is. According to the report, the February against February standing of the elevators on Grand Central are not functioning to the same degree. What is that?
We have 2 elevators out of service for replacement. One goes up to the training center. The functionality is being changed. It didn't go all the way up before. And we also have 1 elevator out of service out at East Side Access. So those were 0%, and you know, that messed up the numbers.
How long?
It's going to be a while, right? Yeah. 6 months for the East Side Access one and the training center?
That's not customer.
Right, the East Side Access one is not customer related, right?
East Side Access one is out because East Side Access is taking the shaft and lowering it down to their concourse to connect their concourse all the way up to the street at 47th Street.
Okay.
And the one that goes to our training center also takes our people from the lower level to the upper level. So in addition, it's just going to go all the way up to the training center.
And how many other alternative ways to get to both of those places are there at Grand Central? If those 2 elevators are out for some period of time?
The one in Grand Central itself, there is one immediately adjacent to it.
Okay.
And there's another one farther down around track 115. So there are 2. The East Side Access, it's escalators.
It's escalators at that location, or they're directed to the east, to elevators on the east side of the terminal.
Who's doing the elevators? Who's doing the maintenance of the elevators?
Is that Nouveau as well?
We do the inspections in the terminal, and yeah, Nuvo does the maintenance.
Okay. And by the way, the escalator at 34th Street at Penn Station is also out. I know I've been up and down 4 times in that regard.
Mitch, let me make a point. As you know, I served as Commissioner of Housing and Buildings of New York, which
Right.
included supervision of all elevators and escalators. The key to this is constant attention by way of cleaning, by way of maintenance and the like, and being damn sure that we are not using proprietary chips in the elevators and the like, so that there can be an immediate replacement with generics or the like, and not being held up by the owners of the proprietary chips. I don't know that we're doing the kind of maintenance. Based on my personal view, and I haven't spent enough time to do it, but based on a quick view, we're not doing the kinds of things that other agencies are doing elsewhere and in other countries.
Would it be helpful? Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, Chuck.
What I wanted to recommend to you is that we ought to take a good, hard look at it. This is an issue that Randy Fleischer has focused on over the years, and it's really something we have to do.
What I was going to propose perhaps is for the next meeting, or in the weeks between this meeting and the April meeting, providing a memo to the committee with respect to the current status of the escalators and elevators in the terminal environment, and also just an overview in terms of how they're maintained. That might be helpful just to advance this conversation a little bit. Well, Jamaica
Well,
got
she
in?
can-
How
she
about
can
just
add
125th Street?
I'll
Phil
ask
can do
Phil
Jamaica.
at Jamaica.
Phil can do Jamaica.
But if you recall, if my recollection is correct, we changed the nature of the maintenance on the East Side access elevators with regard to the new ones going down East
Yes,
Side
we did.
access.
Yeah.
Just because of the concerns we all had about elevators and escalators, and we changed the process.
The
about how that's
paradigm,
supposed
yeah.
to happen.
Yeah, yeah.
So we'll, hopefully that will help in that regard.
Yeah, so we'll put together a committee
Okay.
communication with respect to just an overview of the issue, just to get you the information that you're looking for with respect to
Okay.
routine maintenance.
Any other questions? If not, a motion to adjourn. Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, Norman, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
ahead.
just as my recollection from when I represented the people there, that we do way more of the maintenance of the elevators in-house there than we do the escalators. And we always wanted to do more of the escalator maintenance. And when East Side Access comes on, how critical the escalators will be to making it a palatable service. I know that the plans are to subcontract that work, or my assumption is that you're going to subcontract that work, but that's the sort of rethinking you really ought to be doing here. The elevators in Grand Central historically have performed very well relative to the escalators. And
Kathy, if I could
we'll-
ask you, when you do that report between now and next meeting, could you add the modifications we've made or the plans we've made for East Side Access to
Sure.
showcase how
Yep.
that is different
Sure.
than our current plans? So obviously, we don't have the experience of whether that works or not, but we've all made a conscious
Yes.
decision. We hope it will be better.
Yeah, we'll
in
summarize
regard.
that. Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely.
Yeah. Go ahead.
I mean, I understand there's warranties involved, and you'll have a lot of warranty elements there, but the critical character of that service, it's really a basic part of the transportation infrastructure rather than
absolutely.
anything else. And
Right.
ultimately, I hope you're going to be engaged with workforce development and get the proper forces from our people to perform that work. That is ultimately your goal. I know you got a long period here of what's it to be 2022 before we get the thing rolling anyway. But it takes a long time to make these mechanics too.
Yep. All right, everybody else good? All right, motion to adjourn. The Long Island Railroad meeting will start in 5 minutes.